I started doing artwork 20 years ago as an alternative to medical technology. And the more I studied it and the more I got into it, the more I loved it. I started promoting other artists. I learned how to do foundry work, built my own foundry with a partner, and cast my own bronzes for 6 or 7 years. And then I decided to work on a new series in the last couple years. I have been studying Taoism for over a decade, and I have felt like I would like to bring that spirituality into my artwork. And so what I decided to do was, in the book of the I Ching, which is a major Taoist text, there are 8 abstract ideas. For instance, mountain, which stands for stillness, thunder, which stands for movement, lake stands for joy, etc. There are 8 different abstract ideas that have, as far as I know, never really been portrayed in a 3-dimensional subject. I started looking through this book of these Taoist monks, and I picked out 8 of them that seemed to epitomize the 8 characters of the I Ching. And so I enlarged those images, and I sat down and I started sculpting them in clay. And what I've done is I've begun a series of 8, and the first one is mountain. And my inspiration to do mountain first was because I have these lovely mountains out my window, and because mountain signifies stillness, and stillness is the beginning point for everything in Taoist philosophy. The second piece that I did is called thunder. Thunder stands for movement. Those 2 pieces are a pair that are very significant. Stillness and movement are a pair. I would say that in the West, we would typically say, think before you act. I think that from the I Ching, the saying would be more, get still before you think. And so since the beginning of this series needed to start from stillness, that's what I did, that first piece. As the first piece looks somewhat solemn, and the second piece looks thoughtful but moving, this piece should look like a young monk hearing a story being told. This is a receptive mode, and it should look somewhat adorable. I mean, I'm sure it won't be cute. I don't consider fine art cute, but this piece should be endearing. And so hopefully I can capture that image as someone hearing a story or receiving a teaching from a master. In order to create a bronze, what I do is I start with an idea, I do drawings, I collect images, I set up a general scale, and by the way, each of these 8 pieces are within the same scale, so that they should be able to all be displayed together looking like 8 people, half life size people. And so, for instance, in this piece, I take a real model and I take their measurements and reduce them by half, And what I do in this oil-based clay is create the real anatomy of my subject in this oil-based medium. I rough it in. There's no point in doing it absolutely perfectly, because over the top of that, then what I'll do is I will cover it in clay, and I will give it the illusion of having a robe over it. So each of these monks look like they have a robe over them. Once I get that completely finished, and I mean all of the surfaces polished and smooth, all of the planes right, all of the lines worked into my composition when the piece says what I want it to say, then I take it to my foundry and they create a mold. A piece like this would probably be cast in maybe 3 or 4 different pieces. Those different bronze pieces then must be welded together perfectly, and the surface tooled perfectly so that you cannot see where it was welded together. And the surface needs to be finished perfectly. My pieces are not rough on the outside, they're very smooth, so it takes extra time and extra talent actually for the metal craftsman to bring those up to my standard. Once at the foundry, once those pieces have met my approval, then what I do is in the metal, then I will sign my name on the inside of the piece. I don't feel like my signature really needs a place on the outside of these sculptures. It's not that significant. I write it on the inside, and then it's engraved by the metal toolers at the foundry. Bronze is at least 95% copper. It oxidizes easily. So typically what we do with a different number of techniques, different chemicals, we will heat the surface of the bronze, and we will apply something like iron oxide, which is iron in nitric acid. And that chemical, once you heat with a blowtorch, I love the whole process, and I love the organic effect, you know, by spontaneously heating the surface and applying the chemicals. And iron oxide will turn the surface somewhat of a reddish brown. A copper nitrate typically would turn it green, and a cobalt would turn it black. So there are a number of different patina chemicals that will, depending on how they're applied, will form these lovely evolving patinas. I like for my patinas to look natural and organic. So once that's done, then the piece is then hot waxed, and what that means is while the piece is still warm, just as soon as the patina is done, then we will take a hard wax and we will literally paint it onto the surface. It goes in, it seals everything, and then once it's cool, we'll hand rub it and bring the shine up onto the piece, and then it's finished. Then it's ready for delivery. And that's the whole process.